This is the Amaran P60c by Aputure, and in this video I'm going to give you my thoughts on this light, the good, the not so good, whether I have any regrets in purchasing it, and overall whether I think this is an addition that you should consider for your lighting kit as well. So of course, to start with the P60c, let's talk about the good, which overall is really its core specs and features. So this is a 60 watt RGBWW color LED panel, and I would say if there is one big selling point of this panel compared to maybe other options on the market, it would be its overall output and brightness. So this light can output up to 5900 lux at 1 meter at 5600 Kelvin in just a daylight color temperature. Whether you can tell or not, I just have this on red at the moment. This is only currently outputting 1%. Yes, 1% of its actual brightness. And so yes, just to quickly show this so you get an idea of how bright this thing is, this is 1% now at 5600 Kelvin. This is 25% brightness at 5600 Kelvin. This is 50% brightness at 5600 Kelvin. This is 75% brightness at 5600 Kelvin. And yes, this is at 100% brightness with 5600 Kelvin. So needless to say, the output of its light is one of its greatest strengths by far, and if you're looking for a bright but yet compact color LED panel, this is something the P60c certainly delivers on. However, it is also known as being a very color accurate light with a CRI value of 95 plus and a TLCI value of 96 plus. And yes, this light does have a broad color temperature range for an RGBWW fixture, going all the way from 2500 Kelvin, as you're seeing now, to 7500 Kelvin in this case. Now along the rear of the light, you'll see a range of tactile controls that allow you to adjust things like the brightness, color temperature, all of the different color modes, and actually program presets if you'd like to. And the LCD display on the rear of the light gives you more than enough information in terms of whatever values you're trying to set at that moment on the light. Now this light also has a range of different power options, which I would say is another part of its appeal. You can power the light through the use of 2 Sony NPF batteries, which is what I'm using right here now to power this. Now Aputure states that 2 NPF 970 batteries can power this light for over an hour, and in my personal experience I would say this is true, though I would also say depending on the output, intensity, and different settings you're using the light at, you could probably get even more battery life out of this light. You can also power the light through an AC adapter, and the light also comes with a 2-pin D-tap power cable that will also let you power it using V-mount or gold mount batteries. Now you probably noticed me controlling the light earlier with my phone, and yes, this light, just like all of other Aputure and Amaran's fixtures, can be controlled via the Sidus Link app. So here, if I were to launch the application, as you can see here, I can go into my usual assortment of Aputure and Amaran fixtures, scroll down to this particular light, which would be this one here, and now essentially the full set of features that any of Aputure or Amaran's RGBW lights would have are available to me at the touch of a button. That includes cycling through various different colors, as you're seeing me do right now here on screen. That includes, again, just going through the different color temperature range options and or controlling brightness. And yes, that also includes Aputure's sort of virtual gel function, so if you want to add different strengths of CTB, or if you want to add different strengths of CTO as well. Of course, you could also control things through the light's native HSI mode, such as if you prefer adjusting values in that fashion. Or of course, you could play with Aputure's color picker, and I could look for different devices or objects in my room and match colors that way, as simple as that. And yes, this light does have an assortment of built-in effects, such as the faulty bulb option that you're now seeing here, or the party light option as you're now seeing, and of course I could cycle through a lot more of these, but I think you get the idea. And yes, in typical Aputure or Amaran fashion, this light does come with a range of different accessories. That includes an AC power adapter, a universal joint or clamp for being able to attach and mount the light to different light stands, a softbox and grid for being able to diffuse the light, and a carrying case for the P60c as well. Now whether you know it or not just this light here that you've been staring at, but actually behind me has been an Amaran P60c in use as well throughout this video. Because yes, this is my main studio setup with it on, and this is my studio setup with it off. And yes, whether you're looking at this sort of conventional, more daylit color balanced studio here, or the different RGB colors that I've used throughout the years, whether that is blue or purple for various different videos, this light has been featured in almost every single video I've made in the past year or two. Matching and being on par with many of my other fixtures I also come to rely on and use heavily, such as my Aputure LS60Xs, which yes, I use here in the studio as a main key light, and that I've done a separate review on this channel on that I will leave a link to above and in the description below that you can check out. So yes, when it comes to the good of the Amaran P60c, there is a lot to talk about. However, I would also say there is a not so good side here, and a few things that are worth calling out if you're considering this light, so let's address them. So if you've been watching my channel for a bit, you would probably recognize the fact that this is far from the first video I've done on the P60C. And that is because I had a very particular issue around its Bluetooth connectivity and its ability to connect and work with the light using Sidus Link that ultimately was such an issue I felt it warranted a video or two. Now yes, I have 2 videos on this topic already, and not a clickbait thing or anything. I would definitely encourage you to go watch those videos if you want to learn more about the issue, why I made them, and how this relates to the light. The summary of this issue is essentially the fact that Bluetooth connectivity with the light would at some point, at least initially, stop working. Meaning you could no longer control the light with Sidus Link, and you could also no longer update the firmware on the light, because yes, that also went through Sidus Link. And the irony of the problem is, of course, this was something that was apparently solved in later versions of firmware for the light, but if you can't update that firmware on your light because it doesn't connect through Bluetooth, it's a moot point. My first Amaran P60c was actually replaced by Aputure, and ultimately, subsequent versions of firmware did solve this issue, and in fact, I did purchase 2 of these later down the line. I did have to update them via firmware, and yes, I was able to do that successfully, and no, none of those 2 later lights, at least when I purchased them, which was about a year after my initial one, had this particular issue. So I do think Aputure or Amaran overall solved it. However, I don't know that they necessarily handled this particularly well, because if you read the comments on some of my other videos, there's a lot of folks that experience this. There's a lot of folks that still might end up dealing with this depending on what version of the light you purchase or what firmware it's running. And so this is definitely one of those not so good points that I have to mention. The second not so good point here is the fact that yes, the included softbox and grid, well, I guess it's something, is not very good. It might do the job in being able to diffuse the light, but it's not a particularly strong or well-designed unit that attaches easily to the light. And frankly, I would probably just recommend using this light as it comes and as you see right here, without anything. And therefore, if you need to diffuse it in some other way, throw up a 5-in-1 or bounce it off of something and just look for other options. Also, yes, while almost all of the light's accessories fit within its main carrying case, the softbox and grid do not. In fact, while the softbox actually contains its own small bag, the grid contains nothing. So transporting this can be a little bit awkward. And while we're talking about light accessories that don't quite meet the mark, yes, that universal joint or clamp it comes with is also notorious for not being particularly good. Now, I will say this, I have used one to success, at least in my own personal setup with the light, but this is not something I would trust to hold the full weight of the light, especially with NPF batteries over a long duration of time. Now, Manfrotto actually does make a good alternative in terms of a third-party clamp that you can use for a similar purpose, and I will leave a link below to that in the description if you want to check that out. But this maybe goes back to the point of, is it better to include accessories that don't quite meet the mark versus just not even having them at all? And yes, while we're still on the topic of lighting accessories, this light does not come with barn doors, where many of its other more affordable competitors do, so the ability to shape this light natively with what's included might not be as flexible as what some others offer. The other thing I will note that is that this light does produce some fan noise. Now again, I would expect this when it's outputting say 50 to 100%, but I'm running this at 1% now and I can hear the fan noise right next to me. Can you hear the fan noise right now? Now, of course, to fully evaluate the P60c, we also do have to talk about its price, and this is an interesting point to consider. So the P60c typically retails for around $350 US. You can also purchase it in a 3-light pack, and I have seen this light on sale for as low as around $280 US, depending on the time of year or what types of different sales are going on. Yes, there are certainly going to be more affordable color LED panels on the market, though of course perhaps not nearly as bright as what the P60c can provide. So yes, now we've talked about the good and the not so good around the P60c. So do I have any regrets about purchasing this light, and what do I think about it as an option for your lighting kit? Truthfully, I'm really still not thrilled with the way Aputure or Amaran handled the Bluetooth issue in general. I'm sure there's a lot of other folks that would feel the same about this. Yes, this light does have some flaws, but in terms of what I use it for and need it to do, it has passed that test and done so with flying colors. Slight pun intended. And yes, I keep a couple of extra of these in my kit just to use as quick RGB color options if I have a shoot that requires it, or to use as a main, very quick, maybe non-diffused key light. So yes, if you're in the market for a small, extremely bright yet portable RGBW color LED panel, there are going to be other more affordable options to consider out there, but I do think the Amaran P60c should still be on, and perhaps even towards the top of that list. So that is my long-term take on the Aputure Amaran P60c. Hopefully this video has been of some help to you. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if it has. I have a number of different lighting-related videos on this channel already that I would definitely encourage you to check out. And yes, there will be many more on the way. For now, that is all I have to say, so thanks for watching.